Perky planes in RC here, operating at 2.4 gigahertz, and got my trusty Diet Dew. Okay, we're going to kind of mix things up a little bit here. I know I've been kind of doing a lot of flight tests, a lot of foam board based stuff, and then just some other things. This actually does have a little bit of flight test stuff thrown in, which I'll get to here a little bit later. But basically, if you're not too familiar with my backstory in terms of me getting into RC planes, let me kind of bring you up to speed as quickly as possible. Basically, I got into RC planes when I was a teenager, 14 years old. Balsa trainer model, nitro, that whole mess. And what happened is more or less is I was too scared to fly the thing. I was young, it scared me because I knew it was a very pricey investment. You know, it was quite a few $100s. You know, which is still a pretty good amount of money for what it is. It's not a cheap hobby, but anyways, 14 years old, balsa trainer, nitro, too scared to fly it. Sold it many years later, and then here, 4 or 5 years ago, I was looking to get back into doing RC planes and just kind of looking to see how things had changed and all that good stuff. And to get back into the hobby, me and my wife were kind of sat down and looked at some things and narrowed it down to 2 different airplanes to start out with. One was the Hobbyzone Champ, and the other one was the Dynam PA-18 Super Cub / Piper Cub. Now, between the two, of course, I really didn't know much about them, so I thought, well, either one seemed okay. But the Dynam was actually built a little bit bigger than what the Hobbyzone Champ was, so let's just go with the larger one. So, hey, bigger is better, right? So, went with the Dynam PA-18 Super Cub / Piper Cub. And so that's the one I went with. And when I got the airplane, of course, put it together, wasn't a whole lot of pieces and stuff to worry about. But once I got the plane to the point where I was going to try and fly it, every flight ended up in a horrible, horrible crash of some kind. I think it was one of the greatest lawn darts ever created. So that's more or less what happened to it. And of course, all that damage it gets from being plowed into the ground, you're kind of faced with also having to get replacement parts for it. And I will say replacement parts were very hard to find as well, because this particular plane, it was essentially the same thing as the Super Cub, Dynam Super Cub, but it was yellow like a Piper Cub. So there was that little difference there. And when I would order parts for it, replacement parts, I had to order Super Cub parts because it seems like parts for the Piper Cub version were just really hard to get to, hard to find. So there was times, of course, that this thing was, fixed up and had, like say, a white tail section because the Super Cub was white, not yellow. So I ran into little problems like that. I broke the motor mount on it before, the plastic motor mount, and of course that seemed like that was a really hard thing to find. So, very, very difficult time with this plane. And I blame a couple different things. One, of course, is my inexperience. I had never flown an RC airplane before. So, that you have that thrown in there. And then you also have the fact that I was trying to do RC simulators at the time to kind of practice with. But the problem is that the simulators I had at the time, unfortunately, were just little apps on my cell phone. And they just really were not quite as good as a good RC simulator program that you would get for a computer, where you actually have a physical controller, and it's a whole different experience versus trying to, on this little tiny screen there, trying to control an airplane with your thumbs and everything. So I had to, of course, eventually, I gotten so frustrated with the plane that I did eventually retire it for the time being, and of course picked up the Hobbyzone Champ and had very, very great success with it. So I have more or less dug the plane back out, and I'm going to give it another go since I've had some years of experience doing this now, and I feel like I could probably tackle it again. I've got more knowledge of flying 4-channel and Um, also dealing more with my computer radio, my Spectrum radio, where I can actually, really kind of fine tune things when I program it and such. So I'm hoping this will be a much better experience this time. But I want to go ahead and show you guys what all I've done to this airplane to more or less bring it back to life. We're going to get started here. Of course, here I have the wing. And as you can see, of course, it's got scuffs and everything else. There is my wonderful yellow duct tape for the wing there. This actually used to be a single solid piece of foam wing, but what had happened is after so many crashes, the wing actually was starting to droop, and so I ended up cutting the wing in half here, and trying to add some dihedral to it. I thought that was better than trying to, well, at least leave it, droop like it was. So you can kind of see here, you can see a little bit of an angle to it. Whether or not it'll help, I don't know. But it's worth a try. Something else here too on the bottom. It used to be a single servo for the ailerons, which was located in this little section right here. And of course you can see it looks all messy and everything. And what happened is, how it used to be is a single servo here, and then it ran like a push rod over this way, and like a little additional plastic linkage thing that ran down here to the aileron. So that's how the ailerons were on this particular airplane. Now, as you can kind of see here, I have done away with the single servo, and I'm doing a servo on each aileron. So yeah, we'll see how that works out. Let me show you the fuselage. Now, remember I said that the motor mount had originally, I of course broke it in a crash, and like I said, parts for it were hard to find, so I had to do something. So what I more or less did is I kind of used a Flitetest approach here and did like a small, kind of like a small power pod type of thing here, attach my motor onto it, and of course glue that in and everything. And if you can kind of see it there's a small barbecue skewer just run through it to kind of help lock it in place. And I did also kind of glue it too, just to help secure it. The way this actually was is there was a plastic thing that went all the way around, and then it had one of those bell-shaped or bell-type brushless motors on the end of it. So I actually went more with one of these more direct drive type of motors. So of course here's more of the fuselage body itself. Let me show you guys the tail section here. When it came to getting parts for this plane, I had to end up buying like the FrankenCub parts, and the FrankenCub parts, they were, of course, are white, like I said, and sometimes those parts did not fit like 100%. Plus, the tail section pieces were of a completely different foam than what the rest of the plane was made of, and they were very brittle, and they broke very, very easily. So, what I ended up doing on the tail section here is, this is foam board. The dimensions for the Dynam PA-18 Super Cub that I have is almost identical to that of the FT Flitetest Simple Cub, which you have seen here on the channel. The dimensions, like I said, were almost the same. Wingspan might have been an inch or two difference. So I more or less just used the templates for the Simple Cub's tail section and glued it on there. Including some Flitetest control horns too. So this is actually a Simple Cub, FT Simple Cub tail section that I've glued on. And like I said, it's foam board. If it breaks, I can just cut out the template again, put it on some foam board, cut it back out, be back up in business. Rather than having to go into the website and try to order a new tail section that was that real brittle foam that broke so easily. So this is a much easier, much more efficient way of doing it. And I think it is kind of a different yellow than what the actual body is, the fuselage. I kind of came to the conclusion that, you know what, it's going to probably be one of the ugliest planes that I have, and at this point, I don't really care. I figure once I have some success with it and I know that it's flying good and stable, at that point I can sort of make it look pretty. But for right now, it doesn't matter. So, here's the tail section. I'm going to go here and show you the servos. The original servos had gotten stripped from the plane. We used them for some other projects. So I just went ahead and stuck some brand new 9-gram servos in there for the rudder and elevator. The original mount that these went on was a big foam, it's like a big foam section there, and the servos were glued in, of course. And when we took the old servos out, we kind of more or less gutted that and butchered it pretty bad. So good old trusty foam board to the rescue, and I have a little foam board insert that I glued in there for that. The bottom section here, now the way this worked is that the Dynam had a 1300 3-cell that fit perfectly in this little section, this little battery thing right here. And if you happen to have the bigger battery, it fit in this little cavity right through here. And more or less, I'm going to go ahead and use a bigger battery in it and put it in this little compartment here. This compartment used to be entirely a big plastic insert that went in there, and the landing gear was also attached to that as well. So what I'm going to be doing is the battery I have was actually a little bit bigger, a little bit wider, and so forth, a little bit bigger than the plastic compartment that was pre-made in there. So I just went ahead and cut that plastic section out. I'm going to keep just the part just for the landing gear, and I'm just going to open this up to allow for good sized batteries to fit in there if we need to. And I'm of course, fixing that up with foam board as well. So anyways, that is it. This is the Dynam Super Cub, Piper Cub, FrankenCub, if you want to call it that. In a nutshell, I'm going to get it fixed back up, get it back flying again, and hopefully we'll have some success with it, and maybe we can kind of be rid of its lawn dart status. Maybe actually get it above 20 feet in the air and actually cruising through the clouds. All right, well, that's, like I said, that's it in a nutshell. Just want to kind of share that experience with you. You guys have any questions or anything on it, please feel free to leave any comments down below. I'm also going to post some links to some of the electronics that I used. I know the motor and the ESC, which I didn't include with the video, but it is, of course, there. The motor and ESC came from Banggood. I'll make sure and provide some links to that down below in case you guys want to check those out. All right, and that's all on this particular project. I've babbled on enough about it, so let's get to work on it and get some things done to it, and hopefully have it flying here as well. So thank you guys for watching, and we will see you in the next video.